Thank you. Please be seated. All right, jurors are done with orientation, so we can bring them in. All right, take any seat you'd like. All right. Okay, you can be seated. Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, can everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. All right. Thank you. My name is Pete Cahill, and I'm one of the judges of the District Court, and you have been summoned here as potential jurors in the case of State of Minnesota versus Derek Chauvin, which is a criminal case related to the death of George Floyd on May 25th, 2020. A person charged with a crime has a right to a fair trial before an impartial judge and an impartial jury. In order to make sure that the jurors who are selected are impartial, the law provides that the court and the attorneys for the parties may ask questions to all the jurors which must be answered under oath. First of all, thank you for filling out the questionnaire and getting it back to us. It gives us a lot of information to start with. And your contribution to the important and serious matter at hand is best served by continuing to provide full, complete, and honest answers to the questions you're going to be asked today. Those questions will follow up on issues from the questionnaire and possibly other topics. Now, after the questioning is over, the attorneys will have the right to excuse some of you from service on this jury, and I may excuse others of you for what is called cause. In either case, it does not mean that you are not a fair person, and you should not take offense in being excused. Also, I ask that you not take any offense at any question that may be asked. We must pry, to some extent, in order to explore some opinions you might hold and to hear about experiences that you've had that might affect your ability to serve in this case. The defendant, Mr. Chauvin, has been charged with murder in the second degree and manslaughter in the second degree. In the normal course of the trial, charges might be added or subtracted from that, but those are the charges as it stands today. To the charges, the defendant has entered a plea of not guilty, which is a denial of each and every material allegation in the charges. I'm now going to have the participants in the case introduce themselves so that we can ask you if you have any kind of relationship with them, either friendship, acquaintanceship, or a professional relationship. First, for the state.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Swisher, and I represent the state of Minnesota.
Good morning. My name is Christina Marinakis, and I'm assisting with the prosecution.
Good morning. I'm Joshua Larson. I'm also representing the state of Minnesota.
Good morning, Erin Eldridge for the state of Minnesota.
And for the defense.
Good morning, my name is Eric Nelson, along with my assistant Amy Voss. We represent the defendant, Derek Chauvin.
All right, by show of hands, anybody recognize or have a relationship, friendship, acquaintance, professional relationship with anybody who just introduced themselves? All right, no hands. Also, by show of hands, anybody recognize anybody else in the room who they might know? All right. Also, you may see other attorneys for the state who might appear. Those include Matthew Frank, Attorney General Keith Ellison, Jerry Blackwell. Anybody know any of those people or anybody else who works in the Office of the Minnesota Attorney General? Okay, no hands, thank you. Anyone know anyone who works for Mr. Nelson's law firm or had any dealings with his law firm? Okay, no hands. You were given a list of potential witnesses, and we do ask that if you have not done so, that you review it before your individual questioning, because we will ask you if you know anyone on that list. Now, one of the things the attorneys may not do during jury selection is to instruct you on the law, but I do want you to be aware of some of the concepts that apply in all criminal cases, so that you may keep them in mind as you answer the court's and the attorney's questions. And so I will instruct you as follows. First, the charges against the defendant are not evidence, and they create no inference of guilt. No member of the jury should in any way permit himself or herself to be prejudiced against the defendant because a charge has been made or because he has been placed on trial. The defendant is presumed innocent of the charges made against him, and in order for you to find the defendant guilty, the defendant must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant does not have to prove his innocence. The presumption of innocence remains with the defendant throughout the trial unless and until he has been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, according to the law and the evidence admitted at trial. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is such proof as ordinarily prudent men and women would act upon in their most important affairs. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based upon reason and common sense. It does not mean a fanciful or capricious doubt, nor does it mean beyond all possibility of doubt. Now, if you serve on this jury, you and your fellow jurors will be the sole judges of whether a witness is to be believed and of the weight to be given their testimony. Now, there are no hard and fast rules to guide you in this respect, but in determining believability and weight of testimony, jurors may take into consideration the witness's interest or lack of interest in the outcome of the case, their relationship to the parties, their ability and opportunity to know, remember, and relate the facts, their manner, their age and experience, their frankness and sincerity or the lack thereof, the reasonableness or the unreasonableness of their testimony in light of all the other evidence in the case, and any other factors that bear on believability and weight. If on this jury, you should rely on the last analysis, upon your own experience, good judgment, and common sense. There are certain things you should not do during jury selection. You are not investigators. You are not to go out and do any looking, and you are not to ask people about this matter. You are not to use the internet to look for information about this case or about the law. Above all, you must not talk to anyone who is involved, either the lawyers or the witnesses or spectators. Do not be offended if the attorneys, parties, or witnesses do not speak to you. They know it would be improper to contact you, except through the normal jury selection process, and they will confine themselves generally to a brief greeting. During the selection process, your family and friends will be curious as to what you are doing. You may tell them you are on a panel of potential jurors in a criminal case, and that is all you should tell them. Since that is all you should tell family and friends, that is all you should tell the general public. So, during the proceedings, please refrain from using Facebook, Twitter, or other social media to announce that you are a potential juror or to comment on this trial. You may access those social media tools, hopefully avoiding any social media news feeds, but please do not publish any information about this case or your thoughts about this case. You do not have to stay away from people and refuse to speak to them. Do whatever you wish, but do not talk about the case, and do not talk at all to anyone involved in it. Now, because of the nature of the charges, this case is receiving media coverage. Do not read about the case in the newspapers or online, and do not listen to news about it on radio or television. This trial, including jury selection, is being televised, but no video of you or any other juror will be taken at any time, now or during trial if you are selected. Also, your name will not be used in the courtroom. You will only be referred to by your random number to protect your privacy. The audio of anything you say will be broadcast unless we need to discuss something deeply personal or extremely sensitive or embarrassing or something that would likely specifically identify you. In that case, I will specifically order that the audio not be broadcast outside this courtroom. In that case, you will still have to answer questions on the record, but without audio or video broadcast. Now, with the exception of juror number 127, we'll have you wait in the other courtroom until it is your turn to be questioned individually. Feel free to use all the disinfectant wipes, hand sanitizer, everything else. Please keep your mask on and also keep 6 feet apart. We are engaged in all these precautions in the courtroom as well. In fact, I'm going to put my mask on once you come up for individual questioning. So with that, you can go with the deputy except for juror number 127. All right, juror 127, if you could come right up here to the chair that's beside me. And have a seat. All right, good morning.
Good morning.
You are juror 127, correct?
I am.
All right. A couple things before we start. First, I'm going to swear you in because all your answers have to be under oath. So raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror?
I do.
All right. I'm going to have you pull a little closer to the microphone.
Okay.
The microphone doesn't move well, unfortunately.
That's fine.
And just to note that there is plexiglass between us, plexiglass in front of you. The attorneys will be examining you from the lectern, which is a distance away, but also has its own plexiglass. Bottom line is, you can feel free to remove your mask if it would be more comfortable, or you think it's necessary to be able to be heard well.
Okay.
So, but I leave it totally up to you. And even if you take it off, you can put it back on, whatever you want. And so, if you want to go ahead, that's great. The important thing is whether you have a mask on or not. We need you near the microphone so that your voice can be heard. One other thing is to keep in mind, jury selection can kind of like be a conversation, but the court reporter is trying to take everything down, so we need to not do what everyday life we do, finish each other's questions, use or wait until the question and then answer, and don't talk over each other so that the court reporter can take everything down. And don't worry if it happens, because the lawyers and I are the worst offenders when it comes to talking over each other. So it will happen, just if you could give it your best effort not to. So before I turn over the attorneys, I've got a couple questions of my own. First of all, you filled out the questionnaire, and thank you for taking the time to do that. That's greatly appreciated. Was everything on that questionnaire true?
It was.
All right. Any changes or additions that you can think of right now?
Not at this moment.
Okay. Since it was filled out a few months ago, and a lot of people, when they, in reflection, they go, oh, I should have added this, or that wasn't quite accurate, I need to correct that. Or maybe even that was my opinion at the time, but it's changed. All fine. I want you to feel comfortable giving an answer that's different or additional to anything in your questionnaire. The only thing we ask is that it be obviously complete and honest. So, so if you're worried, don't worry.
Okay.
Any questions about that?
No.
Okay. The lawyers actually will probably focus you on certain questions, and they'll read the question and your answer, not to be confrontational, but to refresh your memory about what the answer was that you gave. Because I'm guessing you don't remember every answer you gave after a couple months.
I don't.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, so don't worry, they will refresh your recollection on that. You were not supposed to read any articles or pay attention to any media about this case or any related cases. But again, we understand that it's been a few months, and given the amount of news coverage, a lot of jurors have inadvertently been exposed to some new information about the case or related cases. Has that happened with you? Have you been seeing like a headline or a blurb?
I'm not a reader. I
Okay.
don't enjoy reading. I've always struggled reading, so
Okay.
I don't read the newspapers,
Okay.
you know, for the most part. And I'm not a Facebook person. I have no desire to be on Facebook or any of these other medias. I like having my own life, and I guess I kind of stay away from a lot of the social things out there anymore.
Okay.
So
Any TV or radio news that maybe you got exposed to some information?
through the years of driving a truck and being the media trying to influence us all the time, I am so put off with it. I really don't even watch the news anymore,
Okay.
to be honest. I'll catch the weather is about my highlight, and I try to do that by the tail end of the news, whatever channel it's on, is
Okay.
about it. The news bothers me.
Okay.
So,
So like halfway through the news, you turn on the weather, maybe the sports at the end, and
right.
okay. If you think of anything that you were exposed to, whether it's this case or related cases, pre-trial matters, any of the parties, feel free to volunteer that because we'd like to know.
Okay.
It sounds like you've been able to avoid a lot of that successfully. But no matter what you know about this case, and everybody comes in here knowing about the case because before you were a potential juror, there was a lot of coverage on this. the point is, you have to put everything aside when you sit as a juror. Anything you've heard, any opinions you form, you have to put all that aside and just decide the case based on the evidence you hear in the courtroom and applying the law as I give it to you. Do you think you could do that?
I can do that.
In doing so, do you feel yourself leaning one way or the other, or do you feel like you're pretty impartial?
To be honest, I think I'm very impartial, and through the time of all of this, it's kept me awake and thinking about things.
Okay.
And it comes down to a few questions, I believe. Why did it happen? What happened? What is the truth?
Okay. And when you're sitting in those chairs, you're going to hear a lot of evidence about the incident itself. And there are certain things that I'll tell you that must be proven, and your decision will be whether they are or not. And in evaluating that evidence, you don't feel pulled one way or the other?
The truth and the evidence should stand on itself, I guess.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Did you recognize any of the witnesses on that list?
I did not.
All right. And we have a trial estimate of 4 weeks starting this coming Monday. Can you make that work with your personal, professional life?
I can.
Okay. All right. Before I turn it over to Mr. Nelson, any questions for me?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Then as juror number 127, Mr. Nelson, you may inquire.
I am a little nervous, though.
Everybody is. The only people who aren't are those of us who kind of live in the courtroom, like the lawyers and myself. So, but you're doing great.
Yeah, I may be a little nervous too, so. Good morning, sir. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the time to write your responses in the questionnaire, okay? I am going to ask you a series of kind of just general questions first to get to know you a little bit better, and then I'm going to follow up with some questions about your responses to the questionnaire. Would that be okay?
That'd be fine.
All right. And again, no one's trying to trick you. If there's a question that is read, we'll read you the question, we'll read you exactly what you wrote, and we may ask you some follow-ups, okay?
Yes.
All right. So if you and I were to meet under a different circumstance, a party, a social event, whatever it may be, and we have our first conversation, what are a couple things I'm going to learn about you during that conversation?
Probably what I do for a living.
Okay. I understand you're a truck driver?
I was, but I've changed professions due to personal life, and went back to school at 50 and became, through an apprentice program, 5-year apprentice program, as a Minneapolis pipe fitter.
Okay.
So,
And again, don't want to name the business or identify you, but so you actually made a pretty significant life change
yes,
at 50.
yes,
Okay. You obviously had heard about this case before coming in and learning you were a potential juror. Is that correct?
yes.
When you got the packet of information and you learned that you were a prospective juror in this case, how did that make you feel?
I couldn't believe it.
Why?
I just never in my life ever pictured being on a jury, I guess,
Okay.
let alone this case.
Right. It's widely reported about. It's a high-profile type of a situation.
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any concerns for your personal safety, your physical safety, your family safety, COVID, any of those types of things?
It does concern me after viewing Lake Street and all of that, and you know what happened, post what happened. It's concerning. You know, I don't know what either side's capable of anymore, and I don't want to be a part of either of them. I just try to be a good person, I guess.
So I guess the question is can you set your concerns aside and judge this case impartially based on the evidence, or would your concerns be so great that you would have a tendency to lean one way or the other?
I'll try to be as fair as I can. I believe it's the best way to go through life. We all make mistakes. And again, what is the truth? You know, I can't judge anything. I don't trust the media. So whatever comes out here, I'll have to rely on.
Okay. And I guess, you know, again, your concerns, there's two potential verdicts at the end of this case, right?
Yes.
And the question becomes whether you would allow your fear of the aftermath of a verdict, to influence how you choose to vote?
I don't want to be afraid to make the right choice. No matter what either side is trying outside the courtroom is trying to push. It's not about them. It's about a person's life right now.
Okay.
So,
All right. When you came to the court this morning and you saw sort of the fortifications and things of that nature, how did that make you feel?
it made me feel good. A lot of the security's fine. I'm fine with that. Again, after what happened on Lake Street and all of that, it's welcomed.
Okay.
Does not bother me.
When you learned that this morning that we're trying to protect jurors' anonymity, how did that make you feel?
It makes me feel good.
Okay. And at some point, we don't know when or in how long, but at a point that when the judge determines that it is safe to do so, you understand your name may be released publicly.
I understood that.
Okay. And how does that make you feel?
I'll be fine.
Okay. In your personal or professional life, can you think of a circumstance where you had to resolve a dispute or a conflict between two people?
Not right offhand. As far as working the construction right now, everybody seems to just kind of go and do their own, whatever their task or job is. As far as driving a truck, I might be in and out of a place so quickly you're never going to encounter a lot of people without much problem. And I was an over-the-road truck driver, so you're on your own.
Right.
So
Okay. Well, let's put it this way. So you understand that your task as a juror would be to resolve a dispute at a pretty grand scale, the dispute between the state and Mr. Chauvin, right?
yes.
And the process involves 12 people talking about and trying to analyze the evidence as it's presented in court, right? And disputes may emerge between jurors. Do you understand that?
Yes.
So putting yourself in that position, let's assume you're in the jury room and there are two sort of different opinions about how to interpret the evidence or what the law means, and you're in the middle of that. How would you picture yourself trying to resolve that dispute or conflict between those two sides?
Again, what is the law? What are we being directed to do? Staying focused in what we're being asked to do, I guess, and talk with people. We're all different. We all got different points of view. And just hear people out and try to be fair.
Okay.
And at the same time, I have my own opinion.
Right.
So,
And that's what's going to be kind of maybe you're anticipating my follow-up, which is, do you think the analysis of how to resolve conflict changes if you have a horse in the race, so to speak, if you have a strong opinion? And how does it change in that regard?
again, I don't have a horse in the race here, but we all have our opinions. I guess I don't quite know how to answer that. I just try to be fair.
Okay. Well, I guess the question is, are you willing to listen to other jurors and potentially change your mind?
Yes, yes.
But at the same time, if you have a very firm belief, are you willing to kind of stand your ground and take your position?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And you understand that the two are not mutually exclusive, right? I mean,
Sure.
ultimately, it requires a unanimous decision.
Yes.
So are you the type of person who would agree with something that you disagree with simply for the purposes of building, of coming to a conclusion?
if I feel strongly enough about something, I will probably stand pretty firm.
All right, fair enough. How do you, in your opinion, you may hear testimony from two witnesses. How do you determine which of those two people may or may not be telling the truth about a situation?
It's a hard question to answer.
Right.
Through my life's experiences of being around the country and dealing with all sorts of people, I think I have a pretty strong gut feeling about people when they're lying to me or telling me the truth, and what happened versus a story. I've encountered too many people, even numerous times, different places in the country, but in that same place, that have come up to me looking for money with the same story, years in between. It can't be the same story every time,
Okay.
so to speak.
Sure. Do you think that two people can observe a situation standing right next to each other? They're watching the same incident, and they may perceive it differently than the others? And it doesn't mean that they're lying, it's just a difference of perception.
Yes.
What types of factors do you think influence a person's perception of an event?
Probably fear, for one. Being startled, surprised.
Okay. So sort of an emotional response to what they're seeing?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that a person's training, education, or experience may influence how they see an event?
Yes.
Okay. How so?
Say a doctor might view an accident different than a construction worker. They're probably seeing what needs to be done to help. We're still trying to figure out what is the best thing to do.
Okay. Good. Can you think of a circumstance in your life where you were 100% confident that you were right, only to later learn you were wrong?
As far as an actual incident, no, but yes, I can say I have done that.
Sure. How do you respond? I mean, I know it's kind of, sometimes it's a real small little thing, right? Sometimes it's bigger, but when you're proven wrong, how do you respond to that?
If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Okay.
And just say I'm on the job and I'm doing something that I thought was right, but then it turned out to be wrong. Well, I'm the one who has to own up for that. And I don't see it as necessarily doing something wrong, but it's a learning experience. It's something you can build from and perhaps not do again.
Okay. Good. Now, ultimately, again, your role as a juror is to analyze the evidence as it's presented in court. And at the end of the case, the judge will give you some questions of law that you have to resolve, right? He'll give you the law you have to apply to the case. And you may read that law and you may think, this is wrong. Or you may think, this law needs to be changed. Can you apply the law as the judge gives it to you, even if you think it's wrong or should be changed?
Yes.
So I'm going to just follow up on a few questions based on your response, your responses to the questionnaire. Again, you had obviously heard about this incident before filling this out, and the questionnaire asks you some questions about what you remember hearing, what you had seen, etc. There are references, and I think you refer to it as the video all the world saw of the policeman holding him down, right?
Correct.
So there have been several videos that have been released publicly, including there was a bystander video, there were some body-worn cameras that were released, and there were some neighborhood or business surveillance cameras that have made it into the public. Which of those videos are you referring to when you say you've seen videos?
Well, where you see the defendant as you're viewing the car from the front end there, and and George Floyd is on the ground on the other side of the car. I believe you only really see his head for the most part. And
So the bystander video is what you would assume that to be?
I guess that would be the video, yes.
Okay. And you said you've seen that maybe 2 to 3 times?
I've seen it 2 to 3 times, maybe a few times more. It's nothing that I want to sit and view, or any other tragedy type of thing. It's just, it happened. I've saw it. I don't need to see it multiple times. I mean, just for viewing purposes, I guess.
Right. Let me ask you a couple of follow-ups. When you saw that video, did you see it like on the news? Did you see it like little clips, or did you go and watch a longer length video?
It was on the news.
Okay. So a 30-second clip, a minute-long clip maybe?
I don't even know if it was that long. You get maybe 20 seconds or something, whatever the news offers you.
But you didn't like then go back and try to look at a longer length video?
No, I did not.
Okay. You know, it's very possible that those videos or other videos of this incident will be admitted into court and maybe played multiple times with multiple witnesses. Is that something that you can handle?
Yes.
Okay. You were asked a couple of questions about your general impression of both the defendant, Mr. Chauvin, as well as George Floyd. With respect to Mr. Chauvin, you wrote, you had a neutral general impression, and you wrote, I don't know the whole story and truth. Can you explain what you mean by that? And
I don't know him personally. I don't know how he's lived his life. I don't believe, contrary to what the news might say, or try to influence people. I don't think a policeman wakes up in the morning to have a tragedy happen during the day. I believe it's a hard job. For the most part, I want to say very good people.
okay. Now, you had a somewhat negative view of Mr. Floyd, and you didn't explain why. So can you explain why you had a somewhat negative view of Mr. Floyd?
Well, if I was, here again, I don't know this person personally. Obviously, something triggered what happened that day. From the way it sounded, it started in that convenience store and it led outside. Again, thinking about things, if I struggled for who knows how long, what would happen to me? You know? So why is somebody resisting when all you have to do, we could have done is just went with them? If there isn't a problem, you have nothing to worry about.
Okay. But again, do you believe that you need to get more information about both sides of this story?
Definitely.
Okay. And again, the question ultimately is, we recognize that people have been exposed to this case quite extensively. And ultimately the question becomes, whatever you think you knew, whatever opinions you had formed, can you set those opinions aside and judge this case exclusively on the evidence as it's presented in court?
I'll try to do the best I can.
So unfortunately, I have to get you to answer yes or no to
Yes.
that. Okay. You were asked if you had talked with your friends, family, or coworkers about this case, or if you discussed it on social media. I think the social media is pretty clear. You don't participate in social media?
I do not.
Okay. And so you've had some conversations, and you wrote, it is tragic when anyone dies, right?
Yes.
You were asked a question, do you believe your community has been negatively or positively affected by any of the events that have taken place in the Twin Cities area since Mr. Floyd's death? And you wrote negatively.
Yes.
Why do you think that?
Because now everybody's running out to Home Depot and Menards and buying security cameras, and even we had a shooting in our alley a month ago where somebody drove by and shot through the garage, someone's garage. So it's concerning.
So it's like the uptick in crime?
Yes, and the whole defund the police thing to me is lunacy.
Okay. And you live in the Minneapolis proper, right?
South Minneapolis.
Okay. Now, there's a difference, obviously, between, or would you agree that there is a difference between protesting and rioting?
Yes.
And how would you define the difference between protesting and rioting?
I think Martin Luther King and the protests back then were peaceful. That's a protest. A riot is not a protest. Burning buildings down is not a protest. Taking someone's livelihood away is not a protest.
Okay. Do you think that was any positive protesting that came about after this?
I don't think so.
Okay. You were asked, or there was a page in the questionnaire where you were asked for to rank your opinion on some kind of broad statements from strongly agree to strongly disagree. And you may not remember those statements or what you wrote, but I wanted to ask you a few follow-ups on those. There is a question that reads, police in this country treat whites and blacks equally, and you somewhat agreed with that. Do you have a personal experience, or do you have friends who've told you, like, why do you somewhat agree with the notion that blacks and whites are treated equally?
I guess that's the way I view it. I don't exactly know what a policeman deals with or thinks each day, but as doing their job, I don't think they want to just single out one race of people over another. It's something has happened. They're either pulled over, stopped at a whatever store or something. Maybe they were shoplifting. It's not the color of a person's, it's their actions. So I don't here again, things that are on the news, I've heard that there's more white people that get apprehended or get in trouble than black people, but it's more politicized anymore with black people.
Okay. You were asked, or the statement reads, police in my community make me feel safe, and you strongly agreed with that.
They do. I think police are great and needed.
Okay.
I mean, what is this? I shouldn't say it like this. It's not the Old West, you know.
Right. Okay. Well, let me ask you, I mean, along that line, you're going to hear testimony from police officers in this case, and you're going to hear testimony from citizens in this case, right? So if you hear testimony from a police officer, are you going to automatically give that testimony more credibility and believability simply by virtue of the fact that they're a police officer?
Yes, I probably would.
Okay. So you're saying you can't judge a person's testimony equally regardless of what they do for a living?
No, I didn't. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just their life's experience in cases and dealing with the public is going to be what it is.
Okay. So I guess the question becomes is every witness should be analyzed on its own.
Yes.
Can you do that?
Yes.
And again, if you have, if you have a police officer and a citizen witnessing the same incident, can you treat those testimonies the same? Or would you automatically believe the police officer more than the citizen?
As long as the truth is there, I guess. I could, either person.
Okay. Now, you were asked a series of questions about both Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. With respect to Black Lives Matter, you wrote that you had a somewhat unfavorable opinion and you wrote all lives matter. Why do you have a somewhat unfavorable opinion of Black Lives Matter?
I think they're a political entity anymore for the left.
Okay.
Everybody's life matters. It shouldn't be just one race. If these people were so benevolent, they could go to Chicago.
Okay. And you have a very favorable opinion of Blue Lives Matter, correct?
Yes,
And you wrote, they risk their lives every day to make others safe.
they do.
So again, I mean, it's the same thing. Both sides have a right to a fair trial, right?
Yes.
The defendant as well as the state of Minnesota.
Yes.
And so we all come to this with our own opinions, our own beliefs, our own biases. And your role as a juror is to be neutral, fair, and impartial. Can you set aside, I mean, you have strong opinions, right, which are perfectly fine to have. Can you set aside those opinions and judge this case exclusively on the evidence as it's presented in court?
Yes.
You have a couple of relatives who are nurses and some friends who work in healthcare.
Yes.
Ultimately, there may be medical evidence that comes into play in this case. And the question is, would you call your relatives, would you call your friends and say, hey, these doctors, these nurses, this is what they're saying. Is that correct?
I wouldn't call them.
Okay. You were asked whether you believe that the criminal justice system works, why or why not, and you wrote, I'm not exactly certain anymore. Why?
I think it all stemmed from all the riots and everything that a lot of people that, and here again, who knows who did all the looting and burning? It seems like they got off scot-free, and nobody's been held accountable.
So you have some,
At least to my understanding.
okay. And it's fair to say you don't know about every single case that comes through the court system.
No, I do not.
You were asked if you want to serve as a juror in this case, and you checked the box yes, and you wrote, regardless of the case, it is your civil duty as an American citizen. You stand by that?
I do.
Okay. And again, in the interests of fairness to everyone, right? Can you set aside your personal opinions? Can you judge this case on the evidence and as it's presented in court?
I can.
Your Honor, if I may have a moment. We'll pass for cause, Your Honor.
Mr. Slisher.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Wanting to ask you some follow-up questions in terms of some of your views on the media. You voiced some strong opinions indicating that you believe that the media is trying to influence you.
Yes.
Can you please describe what you mean by that?
They'll take a little bit grain of something and try to turn into whatever narrative that they want you to believe.
And is there any particular media outlet? You mentioned the radio, that you listen to the radio a lot as an over-the-road trucker. Is there any particular media outlet that you felt was doing that more than another media outlet?
You can go on either side. You could go from Fox News to CNN. They both have their agenda and the way they want to push their narrative.
And I guess, you indicated that you believe that they were trying to influence you to the point that you weren't even interested in watching or listening anymore. Is that right?
It is, and it's not just this case, it's politics. It's enough to make your head spin or explode practically, because I'm tired of listening to one side or the other condemning the other.
We just got done with a pretty contentious election cycle.
We did.
Was that, I guess, in your mind as you were answering that question, thinking about everything that was going on in the news over the last year or so?
It is, and it happens every presidential cycle. It builds and builds and builds, from what I've noticed over the years.
Oh, you did voice some strong opinions supportive of police officers. Fair?
Yes.
And at one point, you indicated that you believed that you would tend to believe a police officer more than another witness, and then it sounded like you were willing to kind of back off of that position a little bit. Is that right?
If a person was there at a scene before a police officer was there, then obviously they have a first-hand account of something. On the other hand, police officers, I believe, are trained to gather evidence and try to find out what's happened.
And I guess that's the point of my question. In your own words, speaking for yourself, tell me why you initially answered that you would tend to believe a police officer more than another witness. What would make you think that?
I guess I hope they're unbiased and fair.
Anything else that, and it sounds like you believe they would be unbiased and fair.
Yes.
Okay. Anything beyond your belief that an officer would tend to be unbiased and fair, anything beyond that would lead you to believe that you could trust their word more than another witness?
I can't answer, I guess. I guess I just believe in the police being fair.
And you initially, when asked the question from counsel, how do you tell if somebody's lying, you said it's a kind of a gut thing.
Yes.
And so do you believe in your gut that a police officer would tend to be unbiased and fair?
I do.
And that might not be a feeling that you have with any other witness, like a bystander or someone you don't know.
It's hard to say what they're trying to make you believe. I've been living my life on the road for over 20 years prior to getting into the field that I'm in now. I've encountered a lot of people and a lot of stories. So you have to discern after what is the truth? What are they looking for? What are they trying to get at? So it's not hard to tell with some of these people out there in the world.
You were sharing a scenario where someone has told you the same kind of hard luck story as a different person, but a year apart.
Actually, it was the same person. It happened 3 different times over the period of 3 years. Gary, Indiana, at the truck stop. This lady would come up. She's left her money in her car. She ran out of gas. Boyfriend got the car, and she's trying to get home. Finally, I confronted her on the 3rd time, and she says, "Oh, that must have been my sister." It's like, no. I remember you, and I remember your story. I didn't say that to her, but that's what I was feeling.
Sure.
So I helped her out the first 2 times, but the 3rd time was enough is enough.
Understood. And you were talking about bystanders versus police, and that a bystander, if like they saw something before the police officer got there, you might tend to believe the bystander. Right?
Yes.
Let's say it's a situation where you have a bystander and a police officer, and they're seeing the same thing. Let's say it's a traffic light. The bystander says to you, the light was red. The police officer who's standing right next to the bystander, and so they would have seen the same thing at the same time, says, no, the light was green. Would you tend to believe one over the other?
I think I would. I would go with the policeman.
All right, and that's because they are a policeman and you think that they are generally unbiased and fair.
I think they're observing something also. They're a witness too. Then they probably know the traffic laws better than we do, though we all should if we drive a car.
You also answered a question on the questionnaire. There was a question posed to you, and it said, because law enforcement officers have such dangerous jobs, it is not right to second guess decisions that they make while they're on duty. And you somewhat agreed with that statement. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you somewhat agree with that statement?
They got a dangerous job. Things are happening in split seconds, I would have to assume, with their job. And they make decisions, judgments, in fractions of seconds to resolve things, I guess. Say somebody was robbing a store and they've got a gun. It's a very dangerous situation. You don't have minutes to decide things, in my opinion. They would not have. And you'll have to deal with it post haste.
Do you believe that it's fair that their decisions get reviewed even if made under pressure and in a short period of time?
No.
All right. One moment, Your Honor. Your Honor, may we have a sidebar?
Sure. We're just going to talk a little bit, so.
Okay, we'll get right back to you. Juror 127. I'm going to excuse you from this panel. In fact, you're freed from all jury service. We're not going to call you up on a different case to potentially serve. Thank you for taking the time to visit with us today, but also all the information you gave. We truly appreciate it. All right?
Thank you.
And you can go with the deputy. He'll take some paperwork from you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Have a good day.
You too. All right, the state made a motion challenging for cause on the grounds that the potential juror exhibited bias, which would prevent him from being fair and impartial. The defense opposed that, noting that he stated he could be fair and impartial. The court granted the challenge for cause. I think he was very honest. I think he was not only honest but forthcoming about his opinions and that. But I think they do reveal, considering the totality of the circumstances and not merely his statement that he could be fair and impartial, that it would be difficult for him to do so, and so the cause was granted. With regard to, I think it was Juror 121, that was defense exercise peremptory, made a motion for cause, cited the McKinley case. I've had a chance to read that overnight, and I'm going to reinstate the defendant's peremptory and list that as a cause challenge. And so, Mr. Nelson, you have one back. Thank you for the citation to McKinley. It was good to review that. All right, next juror, 129. Morning, come on up. Have a seat. You are juror number 129, correct?
That's correct.
All right. First thing, I'm going to swear you in because all your answers have to be under oath, so if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror?
I do.
All right. You have plexiglass in front of you, and we have it between us. The lawyers will be examining you from a pretty far distance away, but they also have plexiglass. My point is, if you would like to remove your mask, either for comfort or just because you think you can speak more clearly, feel free to do so. But if you want to keep it on, we're fine with that too. In either case, mask or no mask, I'm going to ask that you pull close to the microphone so that we can hear you. Perfect. When you are answering questions, it's very common for jury selection to become like a conversation.
Okay.
But our typical way we operate in everyday life is we talk over each other, we interrupt each other. If it would be at all possible, if you could use your best efforts not to do that, because the court reporter is taking everything down, and it's good if people can not talk over each other.
Okay.
All right? And having said that, I'll tell you that I tend to be the worst offender on that. So, first of all, a couple questions for you before I turn you over to the attorneys. You filled out a questionnaire. Thank you for doing so. You gave us a lot of good information to start with. Was everything true on that questionnaire?
I believe so.
Okay, and it's been a few months.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you've had a couple months to reflect. As you sit here right now, can you think of anything specific that you thought, I should have put this down, or what I put down wasn't quite accurate, I got to change that, or maybe my opinions have changed? Anything that comes to mind?
I don't think so.
Okay, it more often comes to mind when lawyers are actually asking you specific questions.
Yeah.
They'll point to your question, they'll read the question and the answer, not to be confrontational, but more to refresh your memory about what you said.
Correct.
So if you feel like you have to give a different answer than what's in your questionnaire, don't worry about it. I want you to feel comfortable doing that because we understand things change, and sometimes you remember things you didn't remember at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
Now, the questionnaire did advise you not to read any articles, don't follow any media about this, but we understand with the passage of time and the great deal of media coverage that you might have been exposed inadvertently to some type of coverage, you know, a headline, a blurb on the news, anything that you recall being exposed to since when you filled out the questionnaire until today.
Well, I've heard some stuff from other people, you know, that they'll just in passing say something, you know. I
Okay.
try to stay away from all of it, so.
Well, we put you in a real tough spot because we said don't tell anybody you're a potential juror, so you can't exactly go, don't
Yeah.
talk to me. It would appear odd. So we put you in a tough spot. But what substance do you recall about the conversation that might have added to your knowledge about the case, accurate or inaccurate?
I'm not sure I'm not sure what all of I've heard since that, but
Okay.
I don't think anything that would
Okay.
cause me to change any of my questions or anything.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for other people's opinions, but maybe substance. Like, did you hear anything about any pretrial matters in this case, or about related civil cases in the, that you actually got some information as opposed to an opinion?
Well, just the settlement for the family.
Okay,
That-
and tell-
I heard about that. But,
Yeah, and tell me what you remember from what you heard.
Well, my neighbor was over at our house, and he just said that the settlement, the family got $27 million.
Okay. What was your reaction to that?
I wasn't very happy about that.
Okay. And how so?
I
Or for what reason?
I don't know how to explain, but
Oh, that's okay.
I'm not sure how to explain what
Okay.
I just wasn't very happy about it. That's just.
Okay. The point that I need to make about that, for example, thanks for bringing that up, because that's exactly the kind of thing we're looking for, is if you're exposed to it, even though it's not part of this case. In fact, it won't be a part of this
Right,
case.
exactly.
It is a separate case, different laws, different decisions, everything is different about that case, and so it won't be a part of this case.
Yeah.
But since it's related, can you put it aside, not even
Oh, yeah.
put that into your consideration here?
Yeah, it wouldn't be part of my consideration anyway, so.
Okay. For example, we asked you, this is question number 10, in a very wordy manner, can you be fair and impartial? And you answered yes. Hearing about that settlement, did that move you a little bit one way or the other?
No.
Okay.
No.
Pretty much kept you where you're at.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. For all the information, like maybe if you become aware of something else you may have heard about, can you put all of what you've heard aside, before a questionnaire, after a questionnaire, what you know about this case, some of which might be accurate, some of which might not be? Can you just put it all aside and any opinions you may have formed about this case and decide the case just on the evidence you hear in court and on the instructions that I give you?
I think I can. I'm not positive, but I think I can.
Okay, I'm going to press you a little bit because we
Okay.
do need to get kind of a one or the other. You think you can. Tell me what might move you towards, here's why I think I can, or here's why I think I might not be able to. Like
Being impartial, you mean?
yeah, I mean, for example, do you come in with strong feelings, about police officers one way or the other, or about what you did see on the media that would kind of bring, even though you try and put it aside, just knowing yourself, and it's perfectly fine if that's the case, you can put it aside or you can't. It's pretty much, we're relying on you knowing yourself
Yeah.
and how well you're able to kind of put things aside. And if you can, great. If you can't, that's also fine too. It just means this might not be the case for you. But so tell me a little bit about that, if you could kind of follow up on what I was just saying.
I guess I would. I believe in the police, and I believe that, things happen, and I would probably be more swayed for police officers. So.
Okay. Now, the defendant is
But
presumed
I-
innocent. You should do that. But you think,
Oh, yeah.
maybe just your life experience and that it might, if you're right in the middle, maybe just your life experience would push you towards hoping for one verdict or another.
Well, I don't think it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want you to know that everybody comes in with different life history. There are certain cases I probably should not sit on as a judge, maybe because of my experience in life. But the jurors, we just say, okay, based on my life experience, I can't or can sit on this jury. And if you had to give me a yes or no, what would it be? Is this the case you should sit on? And that's basically, can you be impartial,
Yes.
not favor one side or the other?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Here's an easier question. Did you recognize any of the witnesses on the witness list?
No, I did not.
All right. This case is supposed to be about 4 weeks in length starting on Monday. You did indicate a concern. You have kids, not uncommon among our jurors, but again, your situation. Could you make it work despite having some kids at home?
Yes, I'm sure we could figure it out.
Okay. All right. Unless you have any questions for me, I'm going to turn you over to Mr. Nelson. Any questions?
I don't think so.
All right.
Mr. Nelson has the juror
29.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for your patience and for filling out the questionnaire.
And
I'd like to ask you a series of questions first that just kind of get to know you and your thinking a little bit, and then I'll ask you some follow-ups on your questionnaire, okay? Would that be all right with you?
yes,
All right. I know that this is an incredibly awkward and unusual circumstance, and no one's trying to trick you or call into question your fairness, okay?
okay,
So let's assume you and I were to have met in a different circumstance, some social gathering, a party, whatever. We have our first conversation. What are a couple things that I'm going to learn about you during that conversation?
I have 3 kids. It's pretty much everything. I don't know.
3 kids takes up a lot of time, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Okay. And that's fine. I mean, 3 kids takes up, like I said, a lot of time. And there, I understand kind of in the adolescent age and a little younger.
Yes, correct.
So their lives are basically your lives, right?
Yeah.
So when you obviously had heard about this case before filling out this questionnaire.
Correct.
When you got the questionnaire, however, and you learned you were a potential juror in this case, how did that make you feel?
Very nervous.
Why?
Yeah, the possibility of I'm a very shy person anyway, so it just is a little difficult
Okay.
for me to, and I didn't want to be on this case, so.
Okay. Why didn't you want to be on this case?
I fear for the safety of my family.
Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. Do you think that your concerns over your family's safety would be such that it would influence the ultimate decision as to guilty or not guilty?
No.
When you say you're concerned for your family, is it because you don't want to be publicly identified? What were the concerns for your family's safety?
Yeah, I've just been, I don't know, I just don't want anybody to know, but
So, I know that you had.
Nelson. This is it.
Yeah.
Sorry, just a few more questions. Well, we go for it. Actually, a few more, but
So, it's fair to say you're pretty nervous today,
yes, I'm very nervous.
and that's completely and totally understandable, right? And again, we're trying to protect your anonymity as best we possibly can.
Yes.
So, I know that you made several references in your questionnaire about your concerns about your family and being away from your family. And I know you said you could make it work, but ultimately the question is, would it be or cause your family an undue hardship for you to be a juror on this case for a month?
I think we would be able to make it, but it would actually probably be good for my daughter.
Okay.
But to get a little bit more independence, but I don't know, with them just going back to school, it's tough too. So.
Okay. When you got to the government center today and you saw the fortifications and the army and things, did that help you feel safer?
Well, helps me feel safer here, but,
Right.
not out there.
Right, and that's, I mean, again, that's what we're really concerned about. I mean, and that's I'm concerned too for you. I just need to be able to know that you would not allow those fears or concerns to influence how you may look at the evidence in this case or influence your ultimate verdict.
I do not think it would affect how I look at the case and all that.
Okay, all right. When you learned this morning that we're trying to protect your anonymity as best we can, did that make you feel better?
Well, yeah, but that's still not going to help after everything goes public.
Right.
At
We don't
the
know
end
when
of
that will be. There could be some time. It would not be until the judge determined it to be safe. Do you understand that?
Okay.
Does that make you feel better?
Well, yeah.
Okay. So, Your Honor, if we could have a sidebar.
Juror number 129. I'm going to release you from this jury. And you don't have to worry about being called up on other juries because your jury service is ended completely. Unless we, 4 years from now or so, send you a summons, but until then, you are free to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
And the deputy will take some paperwork from you. All right. Do you want to start on another juror, or should we take our break right now?
Maybe we'll take our break.
Let's take a little more till 1:45. All right. We'll reconvene at 10:45. I have to discuss some camera issues as well. Thank you.
Your thoughts?
No.